So announced in Los Angeles by the Department of Justice, 4 members of an anti-capitalist, anti-government group that calls for violence against the United States and its officials. The plan allegedly plotting an attack on 2 U.S. companies with improvised explosive devices this New Year's Eve. We don't know what those companies were, but it was not good. The Turtle Island Liberation Front. Turtle Island Liberation Front. Ever heard of Turtle Island? That's what the indigenous people call America. Turtle Island. That's what they call the North America. This is a far-left, pro-Palestinian, anti-government, and anti-capitalist group. When I say it was pro-Palestinian, I want you to understand this. That is not their main thing. They are anti-American and anti-capitalist. This is part of what's called the Red-Green Alliance, and we'll explain that here in just a second. But they were preparing to conduct a series of bombings against multiple targets in California beginning on New Year's Eve. They also planned to target ICE agents and vehicles. The 4 were arrested. They face federal charges of conspiracy and possession of an unregistered destructive device. This was called Operation Midnight Sun, and they were going to plant backpacks and pipe bombs and complex IEDs to detonate simultaneously at multiple locations, targeting U.S. companies on New Year's Eve at midnight. It's considered, obviously, a terrorist attack. Their searches of their homes uncovered Turtle Island Liberation Front posters like Death to America and Death to ICE. One of the funny things that I read was, this is from their Facebook post. Little-known extremist group has paraded around six slogans like Death to America and insisted that the United States' mere existence is inherently violent. Now, this is what they posted on Facebook. When we say death to America and call for an end to colonization, it doesn't mean the displacement or harm of non-indigenous citizens. Wait, you were targeting ICE officials and you were going to blow things up. I do not think it means what you think it means, but maybe that's just me. Sorry, thought of Rob Reiner there for a second. It's sad to lose Rob Reiner with, anyway. Let me go to Ryan Mauro. Ryan is with us now, researcher and joining us at the torch as somebody who's just really going to sharpen us on all of our warnings and all of our research into these radical groups. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So it was in April, I think you were on, and you said, Glenn, you have to pay attention. One of the groups you have to pay attention to is Turtle Island Liberation Front. And here it is. Almost exactly what you said would happen is happening now.
Right. So what had happened is that with my colleagues at the Capital Research Center, we had mapped out basically the entire anti-Israeli extremist movement, over 150 groups, and that was with limited time. So it's much bigger than that. But one of the things I saw in their ecosystem, and this just shows how we live in completely separate worlds, is that this term Turtle Island was commonplace. So whether you're a communist or an Islamist or you're an anarchist or whatever, you would refer to the U.S. as the so-called United States or Turtle Island and say it's occupied and needs to be liberated just like Palestine. And so they would refuse to say Israel, they say Palestine. They refuse to say the United States, they say Turtle Island. Why? And it's because of this conception out there that I'm not even sure is that accurate, that the Native American tribes referred to the U.S. and Canada and Mexico as Turtle Island because they believed that the continent was created on the back of a turtle. And so the evil white settler capitalists came in and ruined everything. That's what it inherently was, and so it's equivalent to Palestine. And so the conclusion of my study, and I debuted some of the findings with you, and in fact, I think you were the only media outlet that actually made a point of this and got this, was that there's a certain level of diversity among these pro-terror extremists. So what's the unifying factor, the theme? It's liberating Turtle Island. It's a way of calling for violence and the destruction of the U.S., just like they want to destroy Israel, but to do it in a way that goes over the heads of people, but people who understand the language know what it means. And it's frankly smart because of all the sympathy and the way American students have been taught about the history of the Native American tribes. So it taps into something where if you think that there's a lot of sympathy for Palestinians, the people that the youth don't know anything about, now imagine tapping into what they feel about what happened to the Native Americans.
I will tell you, the left has been courting the Native Americans for a very long time because the right just hasn't, paid attention to it at all. And so the left saw an opportunity, and they are deeply in, especially the Navajo, deeply in with the left, or the left is deeply in bed with the Navajo. And there is an opportunity to turn people very, very radical. And that's what you're talking about here. And when you say this is an anti-Israel thing or pro-Palestinian, I want to make sure people understand, just as the Marxists were the ones who helped overthrow the Shah of Iran and bring the Ayatollah in, they were partners with the Islamists. The Islamists, and I think the Marxists too, they're not part of the same end game. They don't have the same end game in mind, other than, in that case, the destruction of the Shah of Iran and freeing its people and having a revolution. When Iran was overthrown in 1979, within 2 years, 30,000 Marxists were either killed, jailed, or disappeared. And this is the same kind of thing. This alliance with the indigenous people, with the Islamists, with Marxists, they're all going to sort that out later. They just want to kill us first. They want to overthrow the government first. Then they'll start eating each other. Do I have that right or wrong, Ryan?
You have that right. They don't even bother talking about that scenario too much because they just kind of feel like when you burn things to the ground, what's natural and good will rise from the ashes. And so the theme of Turtle Island is kind of that's why I called it the Turtle Island Intifada. Is kind of like what's bringing together all of these ideologies. But what we also talked about back in April, and actually before that too, was, well, what's the targeting strategy going to be? And what we concluded was that the campaign is going to broaden because they were openly, I was seeing in their communication, they're saying, look, this Israel issue is going to go away. And they didn't want to say it was partially because Israel was kicking their butts so badly. But they said this issue is going to not rally people anymore. What do? We need to become an anti-police movement. And to whatever degree we can, broaden it out to be an anti-Zionist, anti-capitalist movement. And so you were able to tell what was the next stage. It was going to be under the banner of Turtle Island. And they were going to target law enforcement. Specifically, ICE was the one that was most talked about. So that was able to be forecasted as well. But also companies that they can connect, even by some leap, to the Zionist infrastructure. Because that way you're hitting all the themes: anti-police, anti-Zionist, anti-capitalist, Turtle Island, and pro-Palestine. And that's exactly what this plot was doing. It actually came to fruition in a way that's much more vivid than I anticipated. So although this plot was foiled, make no mistake about it, it is a marker in time for this new era, this new offensive that has begun.
How likely is this going to be? How likely is this to become the next BLM movement? This, Turtle Island liberation, from sea to sea, Turtle Island will be free kind of crap.
I think it's extremely likely. The chances are far better than 50-50. In fact, I think it's inevitable it's going to get a lot of support just by people talking about saying, well, what is this Turtle Island thing? Oh, the Native Americans? Oh, well, there's this almost biblical narrative that follows this, where it was like the Turtle Island was the Garden of Eden. The capitalist white colonists, white supremacists with their patriarch came in and infected it like the snake. And then the Native Americans were essentially, it's like a Jesus narrative at that point. Well, they died for our sin. And so now we need to restore the original Garden of Eden. So sometimes they use that language specifically. Most of the time it's just that type of theme. But that's kind of the emotional pull that comes in by tapping into that narrative. And by the way, one of the accounts that this specific terrorist group followed on social media was the Christian anarchists. Now, I know you've said in the past, you've noted how some of the anarchist language went over even into the white supremacists. And people say, oh, well, if they think of anarchists, they just think of the far left. Like, no, if you watch this, how this goes, like, that is the cycle. Like, there is I guess you could say right wing, but it's more like anarcho-capitalist anarchists that sometimes identify as Christian. And so this propaganda goes from the terrorists, overseas governments, to Turtle Island folks, over to the Christian anarchists, and then it cycles around. So this is all one seditionist movement.
Do you think the Trump administration gets it? I mean, hats off to the FBI and Kash Patel for, thwarting this and stopping this as they were in the desert beginning to assemble these bombs. Do you think the administration gets how deep this goes and is willing to do the things? I mean, Ryan, you and I both know the West is on the verge of being lost forever. If we don't wake up to this and we don't start calling evil by its name, we're going to lose. We're going to lose this. We're close to losing Europe.
Mm-hmm. Well, 3 business days after you and I released my report that I wrote about the $80 million that went from Soros's network to the pro-terror groups, it was reported that the Trump administration had launched an investigation specifically naming the report that we released on the Charlie Kirk show 1 week after he passed. So do they get it? I don't know if it's possible to fully get it if we don't. Like, are they doing things? Yes. Can we help them do things? Yes. Remember that groups like the FBI and all them, they can't just collect intelligence on everyone's free speech protected activity, but civilians can. That's where civilian researchers come in. And so that's what happened with the Soros report. We can collect all of that. We can make the case. And so does the FBI know all of it? No, because we and the citizens haven't given them everything that they need. And so I think 2 things have to happen. First, we need to put together a team to map out the Turtle Island Intifada and map this out so action can be taken. And the second thing is actually what I think you're doing with preserving history is very important here, because the counter narrative is going to require us to use historical documents to tell the truth of everything that went on with the Native American tribes, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that this type of simplistic hijacking of a biblical narrative for evil ends can't really happen for these anti-American ends. Even if the perpetrators of it don't realize it's a biblical narrative, that's where it's coming from. It's a combination of the Garden of Eden story and the Jesus Christ story put together and framed for evil propaganda that even Satanists sometimes parrot.
Ryan, I mean, we're supporting you. We're doing everything we can. I want to make sure that others, because you run a nonprofit. Your research center, Capital Research Center, is a nonprofit, and you operate on donations. If you are interested in helping, what Ryan is doing, and this is why I'm bringing him on the air a lot beginning next year and working closely with him, because what he is finding, the research that he's doing, is unlike anybody else's. And it's critical that it happens. If you happen to want to make a donation to a charity or to a 501c3, please consider Ryan's group. How do they contact you, Ryan? How do they give?
Well, I partner with Capital Research Center, who are excellent to donate to. So that's kind of like a research wing. And then also RyanMauro.com, which is my personal website. That's where my specific intelligence gathering group is also based. So I would say check out those 2 because Capital Research Center is broader. But if you want to focus just on the Turtle Island counter-terrorism stuff, then RyanMauro.com is where people can contact me or make a donation so that we can. I mean, your fans can they give me great intel, but I don't have the resources to act on all of it. And so I'm trying to rectify that because you've got an intelligence gathering army behind you, and it's time that we use it.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it. RyanMauro.com, Ryan, M-A-U-R-O, RyanMauro.com. They could use your support because we're about to turbo the research. Thank you for thinking for yourself and being part of a movement, because that's really what all of this is. If you want the full story, you want to go deeper, go to blazetv.com/Glenn. Go there right now, sign up, no interruptions. Just the truth, uncensored and unfiltered. Don't just watch, take a stand. And I'll see you over there in a minute.